Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Steroids Podcast. And I thought that it would be a great way to start out the Steroids Podcast by telling you what steroids I took today. So this morning, when I woke up, I took 300 milligrams of Primobolan injection in my ventral glute. And in my left pec, I shot intramuscularly 5 IUs of human growth hormone. Right now, I'm running an experiment. I'm doing 1 vial of growth hormone per day, so 10 IUs. I've been on it for 6 days so far. 10 IUs of growth hormone per day, and splitting that one shot when I wake up to go pee when my blood sugar is really low at 3 a.m. in the morning, because I always wake up in the night to go pee, and so then I just go to mosey over to the refrigerator and be like, pop, and put that little insulin syringe onto my chest and pop that growth hormone, 5 IUs in there. And then the other time that I take the other 5 IUs of growth hormone to make the 10 IU vial is after my workout. So the effects from doing this, I've only been on this cycle now, which is I've only been on it for 5 days. Before I was just on testosterone, about 750 milligrams per week. But now this is about the 5th, 6th day of this cycle, which has been 900 milligrams of Primobolan per week with 750 milligrams of testosterone enanthate per week, and 10 IUs of human growth hormone per day, split in 2 shots. This is all farm grade gear. And so, yeah, I've been on this for the past 5 days. Now is day number 6. And probably the only other time in my life that I've been this anabolic was when I was on 600 milligrams of testosterone per week and 700 milligrams of trenbolone acetate per week. And I was eating a lot of steak and rice and ice cream. That would probably be the only other time in my life that I've felt as anabolic as I do right now. The big thing is the growth hormone. As I've bodybuilt longer and longer, I've realized that growth hormone is pretty much the second most important substance after testosterone. It's so if you want to do bodybuilding and make it look the way that you really want it to look, like the way that you see Arnold and those guys look, or up to guys nowadays and seeing how they look, pros nowadays or something. But for me, it's the golden era. That's what I like. I like golden era type of bodybuilding from Arnold's day. So yeah, anywhere to get from there up to now modern day bodybuilding, you gotta to get that look. So I'm not even trying to say it's the times. I'm just trying to say that including that look, you got to use growth hormone. Okay, if you want to look like they did in the golden era, you got to use growth hormone. Okay, they were using growth hormone. They were using cadaver derived Crest Corman brand growth hormone. So it was really freaking strong because it was human pituitary glands from dead people, like cadavers. They cut them out, and then they grind up all the pituitary glands and extract like the hormone juice from it. And then, that would be the injection. Once it was purified, they'd be injecting this into people with all these pituitary gland hormones in it. And, this shit would just like fucking toast their fat off their body and make them looking all like jacked and super full and super hard, because that's one of the main things that growth hormone does. When you start taking it, it really hardens your body up. And, within it takes about like, if you take 10 IUs on the first day, you can feel that shit. You can feel that shit 24. No, you can feel it earlier than that. You can feel that shit majorly in the gym 24 hours later, but you can actually like feel the effects of, I took something about 5 hours later. So it takes about 2 days. It takes about 48 hours to see the results of growth hormone in the mirror, from when you have not taken it to when you do take it. And this starts at a dosage of about 2 to 3 IUs per day. 4 IUs per day is a better dosage. Like, if you had never tried growth hormone before and you wanted to see what it could do for you, like, the way to do that would be to buy something that you knew was like the maximum strength and potency and purity, so that you could have like this benchmark and know, okay, this is, exactly what I'm doing, and this is what, growth hormone can do for me. So, for my case, that was actually the advice that I got. I'm repeating that to you. That was before I had tried pharmaceutical grade growth hormone, because I had tried the generic growth hormone, and that shit sucked. It gave me a sexual dysfunction, and because that shit's impure. It's impure. It's got, human growth hormone is very similar to prolactin. The prolactin molecule is not very different than the human growth hormone molecule. And so growth hormone, it's not bad for your sex drive. On the contrary, it's actually pretty good for your sex. But, it definitely is not, it's not, prolactin, okay? And prolactin, don't want that, because that's what Tren makes go up, and Deca makes go up, and fucking destroys your sex drive, okay? So if you got some impure growth hormone, some impure of these fucking chemicals in this generic growth hormone shit, which it's always in there. And if you're sensitive to like hormonal induced sexual dysfunction, and personally, I'm like probably like a little bit on the average side. I'm like average with how sensitive I am to getting like sexual dysfunction from steroids, but maybe I'm like, 10% more prone to it than the average dude, so like I would be like on the 60% side, and the average dude would be on the 50% side, or 40% would be the opposite of me, how sensitive they were. I'm like, out of a rating of 1 to 100, I'd say that like the normal guy at 50 out of 100 in sensitivity, I'm about like 60 out of 100 in sensitivity to sexual dysfunction, side effects of steroids and hormones in general and stuff like that. But I'm also very good at it. So since I have a lot of experience, and I'm very aware of my feelings and have a really good sense of my body, I've been able to develop a system where, it's very, very rare or unusual for me to ever have sexual dysfunction, because I've done a lot of experimenting, and used a lot of different hormones, figured out what works for me, and figured out a bunch of, how to time my AIs and stuff, and what signs to know for, that makes me know when to take the AI and when not to, and how much, fractions of tablets. It just comes with experience. And, troubleshooting HCG techniques. And, coming back to growth hormone now, growth hormone also increases your erections. Okay. So what happens is that growth hormone actually rises in your penis 200% naturally when you get a fucking erection. So naturally what happens is, when the scientists, they did a study on this, and they were like, what's causing this penis erections? And so they were like putting the rubber band, around that shit to keep the blood in there, and then extracting the blood during the erection. And you guys that just winced at that and you were like, oh my God, he put a needle in the dick. Dude, I've done it too. I did it, I took the Caverject injection, which is, before they had Viagra, they had this stuff called Caverject, and it gives you a medically induced erection. And it just won't go down no matter what, for 2 hours. It doesn't matter if you come. It doesn't matter if you go run a marathon. It's just chemically induced erection. I wanted to fuck with that because I was like, Jesus Christ, this is some weird ass shit, I want to try this. And so, I got it. And, I used a 31 gauge needle, tiny, like 5/16 inch needle, stuck it all the way into the base of my dick on the side. Like on the side of the base of the shaft into the meat part. And yep, that shit fucking stung like a bee sting. Oh my God. That shit hurt like a bitch. So anyways, it gave me a chemically induced erection for the next 2 hours. And, it just wouldn't go down. That was it. Okay. So I know you're interested in that kind of thing if you're listening to this podcast. So putting it out there, I did that. Next thing would be with the growth hormone, though. So yeah, the growth hormone levels rise naturally during an erection by 200% in the dick. And what goes with that is that, it excites that process in the dick to make it get, a good erection. Part of that process is growth hormone levels going up. So if you start taking the growth hormone, you'll notice that you have a few more like no reason boners. Like they'll start like popping up. You see a lot of the effects of when you're in puberty again actually start to happen in your body. So that's one of the things that happens when you're on growth hormone. I wouldn't say it doesn't increase acne. It definitely doesn't increase acne, and that's something that a lot of teenagers experience. But other like physiological things that happen when you're in puberty, like you might feel like some of those types of growing pains that you might used to feel like at the edges of your bones, like in your knees or your elbows or something like that. Those kind of like little bits of soreness that would feel, or maybe a little bit of weakness every once in a while in those joint areas. And like a bit of wobbliness or something. I mean, everybody experiences this stuff when they're going through puberty. I'm sure you can remember it. And, basically, anything you eat, like going, like very preferentially to fueling your next exercise activity. So you can like eat food and then be like totally charged up again and like ready to, work out again, after you've just done a workout, Don't you remember back when you were a teenager and, you would, go play sports and then you'd stop for, a couple hours, go eat like a meal, and then you'd be back out there playing for another 3 or 4 hours. Like, it's like that. It makes like all the food you eat go towards like your physical muscles. And so it's a major performance enhancing drug. It really is. Like steroids make you like bigger and stronger. Pretty much. That's like pretty much what they're good for. And then Tren has a lot of this same kind of effects that, performance enhancing effects that growth hormone has. But Tren's got a lot of side effects. But then, growth hormone is the bioidentical. It's more expensive than Tren, yeah, and it's also the bioidentical hormone, and if I had to choose between growth hormone and Tren, dude, I'd choose freaking growth hormone. So, I mean, you guys know I don't use Tren anymore. I just decided, like, I don't like this stuff. Like, I don't want to be going on and off of this bullshit anymore. This stuff is, like, way too harsh. Like, I don't want to be putting that in my body. What the hell? I just didn't want to be relying on fucking trenbolone. So that's why I've found out all these alternative methods that I tell you guys about in the Steroids podcast. Because, trenbolone's the best steroid. Like, it's the most important thing. It's the best, like, hormone for getting the body you want. Like, it's the most versatile and the most powerful at gaining muscle and at burning fat and like being low cost. But it just, low cost in the budget, but it seems that for most people, it's probably not a good thing. And like, I swear, if you're on Trenbolone, it's probably true that you do have an increased probability of being on, like, having a police record or something. I'm not saying it's going to make you have one. Okay? But I would say that the people that use a lot of Trenbolone probably have a higher incidence of being, having a police record than the average population. I think so. I've been pondering that question, and I've been like, yeah, that's got to be the fucking honest truth. That's not really like a nice thing to say. And it doesn't mean that it turns you, into some kind of stupid thing. But you know what I was saying about how you get targeted when you go out, like into like nightlife or something where people are drunk, and then your fear of getting hurt is completely removed when you're on Tren. So, and you also don't care about like fighting or something. Like you're ready, and you don't care if you get hurt, and you have zero apprehension to it. So I think that if you really took out of all the people on Tren on the world, I'm not saying it makes you a violent person, but I'm just saying there would probably be like some shit like that, like an increased risk of having a police record. I don't want to have this kind of shit in my life. I don't want to have that kind of shit in my life. So that's why I stopped using it years ago. I was like, fuck this shit, dude. So, and again, I'm not saying it's going to make you do that, but I'm just saying that it increases the likelihood. It's like a factor that can like push things, that way more. And if you already have those tendencies and then you get on that, it can really push you over in that direction. I think you guys can probably tell that I'm a pretty average guy naturally in a lot of ways. Like, like physically, like my physical body is probably pretty representative of the average dude, like in height and proportion and muscularity to like the average dude. If you look on my Instagram, Bodybuilder in Thailand on Instagram, then you're going to see these before and after pics of, before I was on steroids and like after or before I started bodybuilding, and then like after. And you're going to see that I started out with, it's like a pretty average to other people. So that's how you can relate my body to the shit that I talk about on here. But, we're getting back to the growth hormone here. Yeah, my cycle's going good. Feel very anabolic. Let's get on to some questions. The first question of the day for the podcast is by Violent Architect, who asks, "Hey mate, question for the podcast. I'm 6'3", 120 kilograms. My body type is endomesomorph. He stores fat but doesn't have any problems being big and strong. What cycle would I benefit from? I gain muscle strength fast, but have difficulty cutting fat. Was thinking test, Anadrol, human growth hormone, and Clen." Yeah. So test is good, especially for your body type, with the easily gaining strength and size and muscle, because testosterone dosage is a really good indicator of total size. So testosterone, you guys, it doesn't have any like diminishing returns in the amount of gains that it gives you. So like that is totally not true when people say like, oh, there's not a big difference in testosterone dosage and its effect on like your muscle size and strength after 700 milligrams per week or after 1,000 milligrams per week. Hell no, dude. That shit is linear. It's linear. 250 milligrams increments. So if you took 1 more milliliter every week, and you just kept on adding 1 milliliter over and over again, it's like the same dosage equals this exact same amount of like more muscle and strength enhancement on the dosage of testosterone. Okay, it has no diminishing returns. If you really dig deeply, you can find studies, where they've used just absolutely astronomical dosages on animals and tested these kinds of things. And in astronomical dosages, but, I'm just not going to go there on this podcast. You can talk to me. You can send me message or something if you want to talk to me more, about some of the, studies and doctors' reports that I've had access to, and, where some of this information comes from on these, hard to come by bodybuilding information, like, dosages up in the hundreds of thousands of milligrams per week for animals, and, in dosages for humans that are talked about as, Dallas McCarver type dosages and the studies that have been done on them in humans. Okay. But I feel like that information, it's just better not to put it like completely out there, like to the public, because it's just, it's a little much. It's a little much. So that's why, like, in Ultimate Guide to Roids, it talks about some of that stuff, my book, because there's like a little paywall in front of there. It's like the book is $19.99. So it's like, if people are really serious and they want the information and they're adults, it's like, yeah, okay, then they're really serious. So they can like buy that for like less than like a bottle of steroids. So it's a little bit of a barrier to entry, and that's probably going to weed out, some of the morons that would take, some of the information that's in there and, hurt themselves or something by doing stupid combinations, and, just for some of the raw truth that, it takes to, like, does it take to be an IFBB pro or something like that, and the kind of performance enhancement that you have to use and dosages and stuff, I don't really think that information should be just completely available to the public. So that's why I kind of like stuck it into the Ultimate Guide to Roids thing with that tiny little bit of, resistance there to kind of like weed out the people who are not serious, and, they probably shouldn't have access to that kind of information anyways. So guys, testosterone dosage is linear with its effect on performance enhancement. Every cc you add is more stronger performance enhancement. Generally, capping off experimentation around like 1.5 grams or 2 grams per week, under 2 grams per week, results in less side effects. Okay. Because, going over those dosages, you definitely start feeling side effects no matter what. You just do. So that's my advice on that. For you, violent architect, who asked the question, you're a big guy, yeah, so you need a lot of testosterone. So if I was you, I'd be using like 1,000 milligrams of testosterone for my cycles. You're 6'3", 120 kilograms, so he's 250, 260 pounds, 6'3". Yeah, he needs like a minimum of 1,000 milligrams of testosterone, definitely. Those guys who are like really tall, they need, and they have like a really big like natural body and frame. They need a good dosage of testosterone because it's like body weight dependent. Like a 5'5" guy who is 150 pounds, he doesn't need to have as much testosterone generally as a guy who's 6'5" and 220 pounds. Generally, like that guy who is just bigger and taller human being to begin with, he needs some more testosterone. So for you guys that are like taller and just heavier naturally, it's you got to have that body proportional dosage of testosterone. So you guys that are like, 250 pounds when you start taking steroids, or you're taking steroids, you got to be taking more than like mini dosages, like definitely not 250 milligrams per week of test and thinking that's going to get you anywhere. You're like a big dude, like you need to have some fucking testosterone filled blood. You hear me? So you gotta be pushing those dosages up there. Like if you're over 6 feet tall, dude, you gotta be using 3 cc's a week. All right. So he says, what cycle would benefit him for muscle gain, strength fast, but have difficulty cutting? Oh, no, would benefit him. He gains muscle and strength fast, but has difficulty cutting fat. He was thinking test Anadrol, HGH, and Clen. Yeah, that's a really good cycle. So you get that 1,000 milligrams of test in there, and then you start taking 50 milligrams of Anadrol per day. That's going to make it so that, when you're taking the Anadrol, your liver has like more, it converts more of the fatty acids in the blood into usable fuel for your body to be sent for the muscles to burn up. And so that increases when you're on the oral steroid, especially ones like Anavar and Anadrol. You get this effect where your body becomes a more efficient fat burning machine because there are changes that happen in your liver. And so you'll notice that when you take Anavar or Anadrol, that you don't get as hungry, and you don't have like such severe swings in blood sugar. You can kind of just don't need foods quite as much because your body has this stabilization of blood sugar from increased fatty acid oxidation. And so that's definitely Anadrol is a really good, and Anavar too. Both of those drugs at about 50 milligrams per day. They're about equally as strong, like 50 milligrams of Anavar and 50 milligrams of Anadrol has a similar effect in a lot of ways on the body. The Anadrol pumps you up more and fills you with some more fluid inside of your muscles, and the Anavar doesn't quite do that so much, but I'd say at 50 milligrams per day, Anavar and Anadrol are both like equally, awesome drugs, steroids to take. They're definitely worth experimenting with and being like, whoa, cool. This is what this substance can do to my body, and seeing it like happen in the gym and, feeling the difference in your muscles when you're working out. Hormones are cool, very, very interesting things. So good call with the Anadrol. And then here's another good call that you did with the HGH. HGH also increases your blood sugar. Okay. So if you're taking HGH, make sure it's farm grade, because if you get the brand name farm grade stuff, and it can be for farm grade for a different country too. Like, like in Mexico, they have, it starts with an X, their brand name down there. It's like Zyron Dip or something like that. Zyron Dip or something. That's their brand name of HGH over there, and it's manufactured and made in Mexico. Zerendip, yeah, it's called Zerendip, and that stuff's good stuff. Yeah, it's definitely good stuff. So, and then they also have like Ginetropin that is made in China, but it's only made for export to the Russian market. So if it doesn't come only for the Russian hospitals, so if it doesn't come in all Russian writing, it's bullshit. Okay, so there are things other than like Ginetropin by Pfizer and Norditropin by Nordilet, or Serostim by Merck Serono, or Omnitrope by I forgot what company makes Omnitrope, but not on top of my head. But anyways, those are like some really popular brand name human growth hormones. So there's different growth hormones that come from different countries too, that aren't American ones or whatever. And, they're really good too. They're excellent too. So like Ginetropin is one of those ones. And, so they're usually these brands that are, you've heard that name before, or like another one is Anne Simone. That one is good too. You've heard those, that one's Chinese pharmaceutical grade for use in China. So like in Chinese hospitals, Anne Simone. And then the Ginetropin is made in China for use in Russian hospitals, export only. But those are like examples of good Chinese growth hormone. But when you're talking about these things like black tops, blue tops, gray tops, orange tops, pink tops, because people are talking about like, what is the top of the vial or whatever? What is the color of the top of the vial? I got some black tops generic growth hormone. It's like, dude, why don't you just piss in the vial and take that, dude? Like, what the fuck? That shit sucks. That shit freaking sucks. And you know what? There's also like a lot of counterfeits and knockoffs of, those some of those brands, like there's a lot of counterfeit knockoff gintropin that's not the right gintropin. It's some bullshit. And then there's, the same thing with like fucking humatrope, lily humatropes. Those are very commonly counterfeited. And the pens, those are not so commonly counterfeited, like genotropin pens and Norditropin pens. Those are not so commonly counterfeited. But so you're dealing in this market where it's it's hard to get it. So best thing that you can do is go to countries where they sell this stuff over the counter. So for one thing, when I was in Colombia, when I was in Medellin, Colombia, I went into one of the pharmacies and I was asking her for testosterone. And so she was handing me over the counter Nebido testosterone, which is testosterone on decanoate, 4 milliliter, 1,000 milligram vial. And it's super good for TRT. It keeps super stable testosterone blood levels. And then I was saying, oh, well, I wanted Testovar. And she was like, no, we don't have that. We don't have that. And then she was like, but we have this. And she got really excited face. And like she knew she had something I would really like. And then she turned around to the refrigerator. And then she brought out 30 IU Norditropin Nordilet pens. And I was laughing because I wasn't using growth hormone at the time, but I knew that was like really good, like she brought out like a top fucking item right there, and she knew it because she got this huge smile on her face, and she was so excited to show me, like she knew it was going to be something I would like. And then she was telling me, in the price of Colombian pesos, but I was converting this now for you, how much it was, and she was selling it at that pharmacy for $120 in Colombian pesos. OTC, no prescription required, just OTC at the pharmacy across the street from the mall. And yeah, it was the 30 IU Norditropin Nordilet pens, premix pens, with the growth hormone in there. She was selling those for the same price as 120 US bucks in Colombian pesos. So if your problem that you're thinking about, you're thinking about like, oh, the growth hormone market, what I'm saying is something like this. That's the best way to get it. Okay, that's the best way to get it. And a lot of people say like, oh, I'm not leaving my country to go get something or something. Okay, well, you got to find out. You got to find out what you're doing. I'm not going to sit here and like tell people like how to get stuff or something like that. But I mean, I'm saying very reasonable things, because that's the way I always feel with bodybuilding, is that there's some kind of like barrier to entry on knowledge. And like, as that, that's been abused, that principle, by, making the knowledge way too hard to access and like take way too much work to, figure everything out. But there is some wisdom though in having some kind of barrier to entry on escalating knowledge, of bodybuilding, and like what it takes. So I'll give you guys some good hints in the podcast, some good hints. The thinking men among you, good hints that the thinking men among you can use for your benefit. All right, so good call with the HGH. It makes it easier to diet because your blood sugar is higher on HGH, so you don't get as much hypoglycemia. A lot of times in dieting, one of the things that sucks is you get shaky and hypoglycemia and like clammy and kind of frantic feeling. That sucks, and human growth hormone helps that not happen so much. Metformin also helps that not happen so much by switching your body's metabolism to more of a fat burning instead of carbohydrate glucose burning metabolism. So you could also put metformin in there. Probably should. And then he says Clen too. I mean, you got all the bases covered, dude. Take the Clen. You know what? Wake up. Take the growth hormone. Take the Clen. and you just need 20 micrograms of Clen. You could use 40 micrograms of Clen too. And you just use this and get up and go for a walk. That'll be good for your body recomposition. Okay, next question is from P. Marks, who asks, had a question for your next podcast. Do you think competitive female CrossFitters use gear? They look very manly, and I've often wondered how so many of them can build such large upper bodies. If you do think they're on gear, how do they get around dope tests at the CrossFit competitions? Okay, yeah. The way to get around testing is to use like quick in and out stuff. So up until a few years ago, oral turinabol, which was a oral steroid that was developed in the GDR, the German Soviet Union controlled state, back in the Cold War. They were using, turinabol to get past doping tests because it's like undetectable. And so to be able to test it and be able to detect it in the bloodstream more than 2 to 3 days after the last tablet, and increase that to 2 weeks now that it has detection time, that only just happened in 2016. So before that, it was only 2 to 3 days after taking the last tablet it could be detected. And now at this point, it's up to 2 weeks. So, also, unless you have growth hormone in your blood, which it's like completely in and out in 24 hours, it can't really be detected. And, there's other ways of messing with your hormones too, like, small little bits of testosterone suspension injections, like mini injections, like 25 milligrams around training and stuff like that. Or, like in a woman, like 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams of testosterone suspension in water that's in and out of your body in 6 hours. There are ways to beat the doping tests. That's why the athletes these days, none of them look like the athletes that you see like in third world countries. You guys need to look at what the pro athletes in third world countries do, because some of them, they haven't really caught on to the PEDs stuff so much. But they certainly don't look like bodybuilders, guys, because bodybuilders don't look natural. That's why it makes you go, wow. When you see a bodybuilder for the first time, you go, wow, I've never seen anything like that. That's not natural. How the fuck did he do that? You take hormones. All right. So these women that don't look natural, they take hormones. Okay, that's just the end of the story. They've got a lot of ways. Ways around it. I can discuss that more at a separate time, more in-depth stuff. But believe me, beating drug testing is, it's like something to laugh at. It's something to laugh at. And they try to keep the sports as clean as they can with the testing. They try to keep it as clean as they can, and that's all they can do. Okay. So that's, most of them use like some Winstrol, some turinabol, some Anavar. Like I said, a little bit of testosterone suspension. Those CrossFit women. But I'm talking like micro amounts though. I'm talking like 5 milligrams. And then, or some of them can even use like some of the like testo gel and stuff, like a little bit, and that can be like effective on them. But the growth hormone too, that's a big one. It makes them be able to train a lot. And that whole thing about, they have those stupid ass studies out that are like, growth hormone does not increase muscle growth. Oh my God. Fucking idiots. Okay. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up until like the mid 90s, these fucking motherfuckers had printed in every freaking steroid insert on the pharmaceutical grade steroids, this supplement does not, it's like warning, this supplement does not improve strength and athletic performance. Steroids do not do that for people who are not deficient. And it had like, the scientists produced all these freaking retarded studies that said like steroids do not increase muscle mass, and they do not increase strength in normal healthy individuals. And so they're all like lying and shit. And then, you know, the athletes had the complete different experience with it. And so then it was like, you guys are like so fucking stupid, you know? And they finally, in the late 80s, early 90s, changed that medical stuff. And they're like, oh, now the scientists admit that it increases muscle and shit and strength. And it's the same thing with human growth hormone. They've got these fucking stupid studies up on the internet. And you guys read this shit. And you're like, oh, okay, it doesn't build muscle and it doesn't burn fat. And it's like, okay, dude, okay. Science is the way. Jeff Nippard. Go watch Jeff Nippard on YouTube. He's really scientific. Yeah. Science doesn't know shit. Okay? That's why Broscience is very important. And that's why in my book, Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder in Thailand. That's why I talk about a big-ass section on Broscience. Because there's a lot of really important Broscience, and there's also some other Broscience that you got to like make sense of, and you've also got to disregard. So I'll put like fucking like 40 pages or something in on this shit. Very important, because Broscience and a lot of it is very important. So don't take this fucking scientific approach with bodybuilding. Just use it to help give the scientific shit and the studies that have been done. When you form opinions about bodybuilding through your experience and through the experience of others that you really know in real life, and you develop theories, then look for scientific evidence to support them. But don't go looking for scientific evidence to tell you how to do bodybuilding. That shit doesn't work. Straight up. That shit doesn't work. Okay. Next question. Nicholas, hey man, love your ebook, Ultimate Guide to Roids. It's been really, really insightful. Question for the podcast. What's the best way of dealing with TRT whilst you're going on a holiday? I'm going to the US for 2 weeks next year, so can't take my test with me. So how do I make sure I don't crash at the back end? Okay, well, is your TRT from a doctor, or do you self-prescribe it to yourself? Because if you got a prescription, you can take it into America. If they ask to see it, you just show them your prescription. If you have a prescription from a doctor in another country, that's also honored in America. So don't worry too much about that. And then, if you can't take it for some reason, what ester of testosterone are you using? If you're using propionate, yeah, that's going to be completely out of your blood if you don't take it for 2 weeks. But if you're using enanthate or cypionate, or if you're using undecanoate is the best TRT. So Bayer Nebido makes brand name. That's the brand name of farm grade test undecanoate is Nebido by Bayer Pharmaceuticals. And that stuff, it keeps your blood levels stable you only have to take it once a month. And then it'll keep your blood, it's 1,000 milligram injection. You just take it once per month and it keeps your blood levels of testosterone. They don't fall off really at all until 20 days in. And then from day 20 to 30, they kind of start falling off. So I guess it's about 3 weeks before they really start falling off much. They do not fall off for the first 3 weeks after taking that 4cc injection. So that one is a very good one for TRT. And you could take that, and then when you're 2 weeks, it wouldn't go away. But for you, you're probably using test sit or you're using test enanthate. So if you're usually doing 1cc per week, just take an extra cc before you leave, and it'll cover you for that next week. You won't get any crash. It will kind of be going down, not as evenly as if you had taken the shots evenly, but it won't leave your body because it'll double the level in your body before you leave. And then it'll last in there. You won't get a dip in testosterone. You'll get a little boost. All right, next question is from Rod Reese. He says, is it normal to be dead hungry while taking Test Winnie, Clen, and T3? Yeah, well, testosterone makes you hungrier. I mean, most steroids make you a little bit hungrier, especially injectable steroids. So, it just being on testosterone in general, but the main thing that's making you hungry is being on that T3. So T3 increases your metabolism, but at the same time, it equally increases your appetite. So T3, yeah, it does increase your metabolism quite a lot, but it also makes your appetite go freaking nuts. So it's definitely an equal increase. If you think T3 makes you burn more calories but not increase your appetite proportionally, that's not the way it is. It's like a very equal, balanced effect, increasing the appetite and increasing the metabolic rate, the amount of calories consumed. So yeah, it's very normal to be dead hungry on T3. Next question is from Blue Falcon. Hey, big fan of the podcast. My question is, how do endurance athletes like swimmers and runners take gear and not get horrible pumps? I've run as low as 250 milligrams a week, test with 30 milligrams Winnie, and still got bad calf cramps after running a mile. I've run 500 milligrams test with D-ball, and you can forget about even running sprints. Is it my diet or something I need to add supplement-wise to combat these side effects? Thanks. Yeah, so you're right. They definitely cannot run much gear at all and be able to function the way that, at a top athletic ability. So like you said, 250 milligrams test, and then I think you said you'd been running some Winstrol with that, 30 milligrams of Winstrol. Yeah. So if that's too much for you right now, you can even lower the dose more, because you don't need to be taking a large dosage at all. Now, Winstrol can kind of give people some cramps. It can because it seems to increase the like neuromuscular tension in your body. So all of your muscles are a little bit more tensed or flexed, just slightly more when you're resting them. It's an increase in what they call muscle tone, the resting tension of your muscles, increase in muscle tone, resting muscle tone. So your muscles just kind of appear harder all the time because of that. And so that could be, contributing to that, but it is a really good performance enhancer for explosion, strength, power, speed. So what you could do if you're experiencing some effects is just cut the testosterone in half so that you have less intracellular fluid retention. So you're on 250 test, you could drop it down to 125 test and just keep that 20 to 30 milligrams of Winstrol in there, and you definitely get a performance enhancing boost from this. I mean, with sports, you guys, we're just looking to add these tiny little bits of increases, because it's not like the way that increasing like your muscle mass is for sports. With the muscle mass, you keep on increasing the amount and the strength with the higher dosage. But with the sports, you can't just run twice as fast because you took more steroids. You're looking really, in sports, it's more about complementing the person's natural abilities. But in bodybuilding, it's not so much complementing the person's natural abilities. It's like really exaggerating the person's natural abilities, not complementing, exaggerating them and making them be, really exaggerated. But in sports, it's not like that. It's just, you got the natural abilities, natural athletic abilities, and you're just looking to sprinkle this tiny enhancement on it. So what you want to do is just basically keep yourself with a level testosterone level so that you feel good with the testosterone. And then you can add in these little bits of these little performance enhancers, like 15 milligrams of D-ball or 20 milligrams or 30 milligrams of Winstrol on top of, only 100 milligrams, 125 milligrams of testosterone per week. And that can be a good performance enhancer for you. Or 2 to 4 IUs of growth hormone before bed. That can make a huge difference too, in the amount of time that you're able to spend training and training at a high intensity. Also, when you first get on PEDs, especially when you're really new to them, you're a total virgin to them, it really they really have a strong effect. So, like the first time you ever touched Viagra, if you've ever taken Viagra before, do you remember the response it like had on your cock? It's like, boom, it's like up. And then that's like that virgin response. And then even if you like never use it again for like a year and then use it again later, it's not like that again. So PEDs are kind of like that, actually. They do get sort of a response like that. So when you've never used PEDs before and you're new to them, like your first like 3 to 6 months on cycle, if you add in Winstrol or you add in D-ball or you add in Tren or something like that, or you add in Clen, it's like you see the effect of that thing happen really strong. And so it's like exaggerated too, because you're so sensitive to it. And also when you're small and you have less muscle mass, it takes a lot less of those supplements to exert a big effect, because your body naturally is already so primed to change anyways. You're nowhere near your genetic limit. And then you add steroids to that fire of stimulus and adaptation that you can create by working in the gym, just way under your natural limit or whatever. And it's, if that's where you're at, and the muscle building metabolic things that happen is just like freaking pouring gas all over the fire. So you get these outrageous pumps that like burst the freaking veins in your like forearms and shit. I would look down sometimes. I remember the first time taking 30 milligrams of Winstrol on top of 600 milligrams of Test. And I think I was actually taking like 300 milligrams of Tren at the time too. And then I added in 50 milligrams of Winstrol per day. And it might have even been less than that. It might have been 25 milligrams of Winstrol per day. And when I added in that Winstrol, dude, oh my God, the pumps in my forearms. I was looking down at them. There's like veins that I'd never seen before. And then like the skin was so like bursting and stretching and so full of blood that the little blood vessels all over my forearms on the insides were like burst. So there's these little like purple lines all over the place because they were exploding because they had too much blood in them. Fucking nuts. But that doesn't happen anymore. So as you become more used to it, that doesn't really happen. And also big pumps are a big result of eating carbohydrates. That's like huge for pumps. The things that work best for making you get a pump in the gym, like real talk, not supplement talk, is steroids that increase water retention. So any steroid that makes you increase water retention can help you get an insane pump. And then there are some that don't increase water retention. They also help you get an insane pump, but they're more unusual. So yeah, like Tren would be one of those. Taking steroids and taking growth hormone. Those two things help you get an insane pump. They both work really good. And then the third thing is eating carbohydrates. And basically, if you just take steroids and you don't eat carbohydrates, you're not really going to have a good pump at all. Like, at all. And if you take steroids and growth hormone and you eat a little bit of carbs, you can get a pretty good pump. But if you take, just steroids and you eat a ton of carbs, you can get a fucking insane pump. And then if you're on steroids and growth hormone and you eat a ton of carbs, it's like, what the fuck? My body looks completely different right now in the gym than when I entered the fucking gym. So, that's that. Next question. Jerry asks, you think in the next podcast you could talk about the difficulties we have bodybuilding with guys who do jobs and work crazy hours, and how much balance do you really need to practice in life just to get your meals in and your training days in? PEDs are awesome, but I think people don't realize how committed you really need to be and how much work it is getting it all in. Plus, I have a family. A lot of guys do. I think bodybuilding is romanticized sometimes and don't get what they want out of the amount of money they're investing because they're unprepared. Yeah, I would agree with that. It seems to be a thing where you gain more knowledge about what it really is getting yourself into as you go further and further. So I think that contributes to that. But you can make bodybuilding pretty simple. Like there's a lot of, like, the podcast, it's so much information. It's like a flood of information. So it's like overwhelming. And so that's like why I have the book, because the book is just 109 pages and it's like all of the, it's like only the important information. And I like cut all the fat out to make it as simple as possible so that like a child could read that shit and then be able to like talk to you about steroids and PEDs afterwards. That's how simple it is. But it's like so packed with information. But it's just like, after I wrote it, you know, then I went back through it and I was like cutting out all the fat and like every single word, you know, that wasn't necessary to get the freaking point across to you. I deleted that shit. I fucking delete, baby. And that's why the book is so freaking awesome. It has so many freaking good reviews and everything. And it's like the best. You know what? I mean, this rivals, I think it's better than the Underground Steroid Handbook by Dan Duchesne. I mean, definitely. I think Ultimate Guide to Roids is better than the famous
The Handbook. The Handbook by Dan Duchesne.
You know what? That's a very famous bodybuilding book, but in my opinion, you know what? If Ultimate Guide to Roids was out there, you know, I think a light a fire under Dan Duchesne's ass with this. Ultimate Guide to Roids is the greatest book that has ever been written about bodybuilding, that shows you a roadmap of exactly what you need to do in order to attain your bodybuilding goals and dreams that you had when you first joined the gym. That vision that you had in your head. Ultimate Guide to Roids explains how you can get there. It explains how you can get there, what you need to do exactly, with nothing left out. It's the full truth with no half-truths, only full truth, giving you the information and letting you decide what to do with it. Okay? You're an adult. You can handle the fucking information. So it's there. You know, I still have some people talk to me about the book like, I don't think you should be, you know, putting out this information or something. Don't you think that's like irresponsible? And I'm like, dude, they're adults. You know, we don't need to be like, this isn't like bedtime story, like taking care of you and like thinking, you know, like, oh, I'm going to make these decisions for you not to tell you the truth because I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. It's like, you're a freaking adult. So if you want the information, I'm not going to be like, you know, acting like some kind of douchebag. I'm just thinking, you know what? You're an adult. Here. Fuck. All right. Next question. Joe the Pirate asks, Dan, love the podcast. I'm thinking about starting my first Test C Tren cycle. What's your opinion on the best dosage? Oh, yeah. So 300 milligrams per week of Trenbolone is the perfect first cycle dosage. And a good dosage to run is basically the same dosage of testosterone. So 1 or 2 cc's of testosterone cypionate, and then 1 or 2 cc's, and then around 300 milligrams or so of Trenbolone, 300 to 400 milligrams with that, because then you get the full effect of Tren and you feel it. You know what this shit's all about, but it's not too much. It's not like you're really pushing it or anything. You just get the full effect, and you'd be like, okay, now I know what this shit's all about. But if you only do 50 milligrams every other day, so 175 milligrams per week, it's not enough. And you'll kind of like get like a little appetite of what Tren can do, but you won't get the, you won't be somebody who knows, I know what Tren is all about. I fucking felt the effects of Tren. You won't get to experience that. So that takes 300 milligrams per week or more to experience that. That's my advice on dosages. Domian asks, human growth hormone or metformin before cheat meal with the Christmas days and New Year's Eve. I want to eat out with family. I want to enjoy the food with family. Good idea. That is a super good idea because, you know, You got to remember that you're doing bodybuilding to enjoy it and like add happiness to your life. That's the same reason why you should want to have like a girlfriend or a significant other or whatever shit too, or just your friends, all your friends that you hang out with. You always want to be doing that to make your life better and to make you enjoy it more. So if you're doing bodybuilding and that's making you not be able to enjoy the Christmas holidays and the New Year and enjoying food with the family, yo, those are like some of the best things about like life right there. Okay, so if bodybuilding is getting in the way of that, then it's too much. It's too much for the normal guy. If you've got a competition right there, okay, I understand that. But for the normal guy, you know, you need to find some balance in your life because, goddamn, that's like some of the most best memories of our whole lives is, you know, those holiday meals with the family and, you know, spending time together eating and doing holiday foods. So, oh man, you got to do that. You got to do that. And if you're looking to limit the damage, yes, right before you eat, just, you know, taking 1,000 milligrams of metformin, that will act as a filter on the food, and a lot of it will just go straight through you without getting absorbed. So you just kind of like shit it out after chewing it. And then growth hormone like completely blocks fat uptake, fatty acid uptake into fat cells. So if you take that after a meal, I mean, it will prevent you from, it'll raise your blood sugar a lot, but it will prevent you from storing that as fat. Another thing that people I see people do is like glycogen loading, where they like take Anadrols because, you know, Anadrols is so good at like loading glycogen or carbohydrate fuel storage into muscle cells. So like, oh shit, I just ate this cheat meal, I got a glycogen load, and like take an Anadrol. So those are some tips on that. Also clenbuterol, man, like 40 micrograms of clenbuterol per day. Dude, that is so potent at preventing fat gain. Man, clenbuterol is really effective at preventing fat gain. Power to the People asks, HGH protocols and timing, morning versus evening. Yeah, I talked about in the beginning of the episode how I do HGH. I've experimented with a lot of different ways and talked to a lot of other guys that experiment with different ways. The way that it's secreted naturally is mostly when you're asleep and your blood sugar is really low. So if you wake up to go to the bathroom in the night, you can take a shot then. So it's like a really little needle, you know, and if you already have it ready, it's just like boop, and it's over in 10 seconds. So that's the most natural way to take it. And it is a recovery drug. So, and since it's normally released in your body naturally at night, it's a good thing to take it at night. Another common time to take it would be when you wake up in the morning before you eat, and another common time to take it would be after training, since after training is when you need the IGF-1 and the growth hormone in your blood to be helping repair the muscle cells and build new ones. So those are the times that people take growth hormone. Taking dosages in increments of 2 to 4 IUs is fine. Even up to 5 IUs would be like common usage, because people that take a vial of growth hormone per day, like sometimes those people take 4 shots per day, or sometimes those people take 2 shots per day, or sometimes, you know, they do it all in one shot. So it just depends on what's their method of doing it. But yeah, that's how that goes. If you've never used growth hormone before, definitely start at a dosage of around 2 to 4 IUs per day, because if you start at a dosage more than that, you're going to get severe water retention, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. Not going to be a pleasant thing for you. Okay. So next question is from Horton, who asks, I have a question for the podcast. There's a lump. I've listened to your previous podcast, fan of the show, on this, and have started Nolvadex, and after 2 weeks it's fading. So a huge thank you for the info. Oh, good. So he got some gyno and then listened to the podcast, figured out how to get rid of gyno, and started taking Nolvadex, 2 weeks ago, and now it's a lot better. Okay, I want to start my next cycle once it's gone without any problems. So what should I take to stop this happening again? Deca maybe have caused it. I'm looking at doing 30 milligrams of D-ball for 8 weeks, 300 milligrams of Deca for 10 weeks, 500 Test E for 10 weeks. Yeah, so you got to take like an anti-estrogen with your testosterone. So you got to take a Arimidex or exemestane or letrozole, and you got to take a couple tablets per week on average. But some people have to take more, and some people have to take less. So you got to fiddle around with your dosages on that till you find the right spot for you and how much estrogen or progesterone or prolactin that your body produces from those hormones. So that's like troubleshooting. Getting that taken care of. I can help guys do that if they do the 1 month text message based coaching with me on WhatsApp. That one's $99 a month, and on that I talk to you every day. So if you guys are looking to do some like really detailed troubleshooting, like getting, finding out how to use your AI and, your prolactin and then like levels of other hormones in order to get the best quality of life. And, I'm going to have to be asking you a lot of questions, like, using my experience to ask you the right questions about how you're feeling during the day and, optimizing these little dosages or fractions of dosages of tablets and troubleshooting, finding different, finding out more information as we keep working. And then, after a couple weeks, just because I'm very experienced with these things, I'd be confident that we could get you in the exact right ranges to be feeling the best. So that's something that we can do with the monthly text messaging coaching. For this next cycle for you, yeah, you're going to need to make sure to have cabergoline on hand before you start the cycle, and to have Arimidex or exemestane or letrozole on hand before you start the cycle. And you're going to need to, if Arimidex or exemestane is not stopping the gyno, then you're going to have to put in the cabergoline, which is antiprolactin, at 0.5 milligrams or 0.25 milligrams twice per week. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to have to take out the Deca. And then, at that point, you should be okay on 500 test. So, next question is from Magnus, and this is the last question for the day. This is actually him kind of saying something that happened to him. So, heading to Phuket, Thailand this week to start my blast. I was on for 6 weeks when I first got here, but my doses were too low, and I was just kind of feeling out AI, anti-estrogen dosing, and making sure my levels were good. So not much of a blast. I've been completely off for 6 weeks, and now that I know what doses I need, I'm going to start tests 750 milligrams per week, 250 milligrams per week Deca, and 30 milligrams D-ball for 8 weeks. Then bump the testosterone up to 1,000 milligrams per week for the rest of the cycle. Then he says, I was expecting 400 tests to make me super jacked, but it honestly felt just like high dose of the SARM LGD 4333. So he is kind of echoing what I've said that is the case when a lot of guys, start 500 milligrams of testosterone per week. He did 400 per week for a first steroid cycle, because this was his first steroid cycle, this guy. He did 400 per week. And usually you have expectations about what steroids are going to do for you. So when you get on a cycle of that light, it's not enough. It's not a threshold dosage to really meet those expectations. So that's why guys who start out with less than 750 milligrams of testosterone per week as a first cycle, they're not impressed for the most part. Or, if they do start out with less than 750 milligrams per week and they do like 250 milligrams or 500 milligrams per week, they've got to add an oral steroid in there or a second injectable or something to really be impressed and see what steroids can do for them. Because just 500 milligrams per week solo is always, when you got those expectations of this is what it's going to be like to be on steroids. And then you get on 500 milligrams per week, it's like, what the fuck? It just doesn't give the right look. you don't get like harder and more muscular doing that. You actually get like softer, and you slowly get stronger. You're like more puffy and slowly get stronger. And, you know, you get like bigger, but you're not getting like more muscular and like defined and chiseled and like separation and stuff like that. So it's a bit confusing. That first cycle, 500 milligrams test per week, it can be like, what the hell is this? This is not what I was expecting. That's what happened to him. So figures like he's got it figured out now, though, because he's going to do 750 test, 250 deca, 30 milligrams D-ball for 8 weeks, and then bump that test up to 1,000. I think that sounds like for the rest of his cycle, I think that sounds like a good idea. The lower dose D-ball, 30 milligrams per day. Yeah, you can do that for 8 weeks. Usually not going to be feeling any toxicity. If you do feel toxicity like tiredness, zero appetite, don't want to train, then, you know, stop the D-ball if you feel that before 8 weeks. And then the 750 test with the 250 deca, and then later 1,000 test. Yeah, that sounds great. So with this cycle, nope, it's not going to feel like a high dose LGD. This is going to be a proper cycle, and this is going to get you going straight towards the direction that you want to. So just make sure that you're eating protein meals with protein throughout the day. So you can't just be eating like once or twice. And, you know, if you really want to get big, you got to throw in some not clean food. Bodybuilder in Thailand, out.
If you would like your questions to be answered on the Steroids Podcast, go to steroidspodcast.com and leave a comment with your questions, or email or private message steroidspodcast@gmail.com or steroidspodcast on Instagram. Until next time.